Mom screamed I was dead to her and kicked me out. Days later, after learning I'd stopped paying, she begged me back. My answer broke her completely. The marinara sauce splattered across my mother's pristine white tablecloth like blood on snow, each droplet a tiny explosion that seemed to echo the bomb that had just been dropped at our Sunday dinner. My mother's hand trembled violently as she set down the ladle, her knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. For what felt like an eternity, the only sound in our modest Boston suburban home was the relentless ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, counting down the seconds until everything would change forever. "You've been paying our mortgage?" My mother, Linda, spoke each word deliberately, like she was spitting out shards of glass. Her face had turned an alarming shade of red, the vein at her temple pulsing visibly. "Behind our backs? For 5 years? Like we're some kind of charity case? Like we're beggars who need your pity?" I'm Emma, 32 years old, with a corner office at one of Boston's most prestigious financial consulting firms. I'd worked 70-hour weeks for years, climbed the corporate ladder with single-minded determination, sacrificed relationships and friendships for my career. But sitting at that dinner table, under my mother's withering gaze, I felt like the 12-year-old girl who could never quite meet her expectations, who brought home a 97 on a test, only to be asked where the other 3 points went. My father, Robert, pushed his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose nervously, a gesture I'd witnessed 1,000 times throughout my childhood whenever he wanted to disappear into the background. His eyes darted between Linda and me, but he said nothing, as usual. My brother Marcus had possessed the good sense to move to Seattle 3 years ago, escaping this toxic dynamic. I envied him that distance now. Aunt Helen, who had unknowingly lit this fuse with her casual comment about that wonderful bank assistance program, helping my parents, sat frozen in her chair, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. She looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear entirely. "I was trying to help," I said quietly, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. "You were going to lose the house. I couldn't let that happen." "Help?" Linda's voice rose to a shriek that made Robert flinch. "You think we need your help? You think you're so much better than us with your fancy city job and your expensive clothes? Walking in here every week like you're doing us a favor by gracing us with your presence?" The irony cut deep, slicing through me like a knife. The clothes she mocked had been bought at discount stores and outlet malls because every extra penny went toward keeping the roof over their heads. The fancy city job meant 70-hour weeks, canceled vacations, and a social life that consisted of takeout containers and Netflix documentaries watched alone at midnight. The designer handbag she always commented on was a fake I'd bought from a street vendor, carrying it because she seemed to expect success to look a certain way. But they didn't know any of that. They couldn't know that. It had started 5 years ago when Dad lost his job at the manufacturing plant where he'd worked for 23 years. He was 57, too young to retire, too old to easily find new work in an economy that valued youth and tech skills he didn't possess. The bills began piling up like snowdrifts against their front door. The foreclosure notices started arriving, official and terrifying in their cream-colored envelopes. I'd seen them during one of my Sunday visits, tucked hastily under a pile of newspapers when I walked into the kitchen unexpectedly. That night, I'd gone home to my sparse apartment and spent hours on the phone with the bank, setting up an elaborate lie. I created paperwork for a mortgage assistance program that was really just me, hemorrhaging $3,000 a month to keep my parents in their 3-bedroom colonial. I forged documents, careful to make them look official enough to be believed, but not so perfect as to raise suspicion. Every month, I watched my savings account dwindle, my dreams of traveling or buying my own place evaporating like morning mist. "You're a liar," Linda continued, her voice dripping with venom. "A manipulative, controlling liar who thinks she can buy us. Is that what this is? You pay our bills so you can lord it over us, so you can feel superior?" "Linda, maybe we should," Robert started tentatively, but she whirled on him. "Don't you dare defend her. She's been lying to us for 5 years, Robert. 5 years. Going behind our backs, treating us like children who can't handle their own affairs." "You couldn't handle them." The words burst out of me before I could stop them. Years of suppressed frustration erupting like a volcano. Dad lost his job and you refused to downsize. You refused to get a job yourself. You just kept spending like nothing had changed, and when the foreclosure notices came, you hid them and pretended everything was fine. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda's face had gone from red to purple, and for a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Then, with a calmness that was somehow more terrifying than her screaming, she spoke. Get out. Get out of my house and never come back. You're not my daughter. I don't want to see your ungrateful, deceitful face again. You're dead to me. Mom, please. Now. Get out now. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like they were made of water. Every fiber of my being wanted to apologize, to take it back, to smooth things over like I always did. But something inside me, some last thread of self-preservation, held firm. I looked at Robert, silently begging him to say something, to stand up for me just once. He stared at his plate, his shoulders hunched in defeat. Fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll go. But remember this moment, because you just threw out the only person keeping this roof over your heads. I grabbed my purse and walked out, leaving my winter coat behind in my haste to escape. The December air bit at my skin like tiny needles, but I barely felt it through the numbness spreading through my body. I heard Helen call after me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I might turn around, and I couldn't go back. Not this time. The tears didn't come until I was in my car, driving away from the house I'd saved but could never truly call home. They came in waves, each one threatening to drown me. I had to pull over twice because I couldn't see through the blur. By the time I reached my apartment in the city, I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only a shell. I sat in my dark living room for hours, not bothering to turn on the lights. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Marcus. Helen had called him immediately, of course, the family telegraph system working as efficiently as always. Heard about dinner. You okay? His first text read. Mom really lost it, huh? Came the second. Emma, please respond. I'm worried. The third. Finally I typed back. I'm done. I'm finally done. Good, came his immediate reply. It's about time. The next morning, a Saturday, I woke up with swollen eyes and a resolve that surprised me. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank account. The automated payment to my parents' mortgage company was scheduled for Monday. With shaking hands but a steady heart, I canceled it. A pop-up asked me to confirm. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring payment? Yes, I was sure. I had never been more sure of anything in my life. Then I went to my phone. I blocked Linda's number first, then Robert's. I left the family group chat without explanation. If I was ungrateful, if I was dead to them, if I wasn't welcome in the home I'd been keeping afloat, then they could figure it out themselves. Let them solve their own problems for once. The first week was the hardest. The silence felt wrong, like a missing tooth your tongue keeps searching for. For 5 years my routine had revolved around them. Sunday dinners where Linda criticized my appearance, my job, my lack of a husband, my choice of car, my hairstyle, my weight, everything and nothing all at once. Holiday gatherings where she compared me unfavorably to her friends' daughters, the ones who'd given her grandchildren, who'd married doctors or lawyers, who lived in bigger houses. Phone calls where she complained about everything while I bit my tongue until it bled and transferred money to keep their lights on. Now there was nothing, and the nothing felt both empty and liberating, like standing at the edge of a cliff with your arms spread wide. My best friend Jessica found me crying in my office the following Wednesday. I'd thought I was alone, staying late as always, when she walked in with Thai takeout. I figured you'd be here, she said, closing the door behind her. Helen called me, she's worried about you. Talk to me, Emma, tell me everything. So I did. Through tears and pad Thai, I told her everything. The secret payments, the constant criticism, the way Linda had trained me to believe I was never enough while simultaneously taking everything I had to give. The explosion at dinner, the cruel words that still echoed in my ears. Emma, Jessica said when I finished, her own eyes wet with sympathy and rage. You've been emotionally abused and financially manipulated for years. Your mother threw you out of a house you've been paying for. Do you understand how absolutely fucked up that is? I hadn't thought of it that way. In my mind, I was just doing what daughters did, what good daughters did. Taking care of family, being responsible, being dutiful. But Jessica was right. Somewhere along the way, duty had become self-destruction, love had become exploitation. You need to talk to someone, Jessica insisted. A professional. This isn't just about money, Emma. This is about years of psychological damage. Marcus called that weekend while I was attempting to clean my apartment, trying to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't spiral. They don't know the mortgage payment didn't go through yet, he said without preamble. But they will soon. The bank will notify them when the payment doesn't come. Not my problem anymore, I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Good for you, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. I've been telling you for years to stop enabling them. They made their bed with their pride and their refusal to adapt. Maybe now they'll finally have to face reality. Why did you really move to Seattle? I asked suddenly. Was it just the job or? He was quiet for a moment. You know why, Emma? I couldn't watch it anymore. The way she treated you, the way Dad just let it happen. And I couldn't be the one to save them either. I'm not as strong as you. Or maybe I'm stronger because I left. I don't know anymore. You're stronger, I said. You got out before they could sink their claws in too deep. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, whom I'd started seeing after Jessica's insistence, and found through my company's employee assistance program, introduced me to terms I'd never associated with my family. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, codependency, enmeshment, parentification. You've been the family scapegoat and the savior simultaneously, Dr. Martinez explained during our third session, her voice gentle but firm. That's an impossible position to maintain. You're expected to be perfect enough to avoid criticism but never so successful that you overshadow your mother's ego. You're required to save them while being told you're not good enough to be saved yourself. But they're my parents, I protested weakly, the guilt still gnawing at my insides like a parasite. And what does that mean to you? That you owe them your life? Your happiness? Your financial security? Where is it written that being someone's child means accepting abuse? 3 weeks after the dinner, the text started, first from Dad's phone, casual and carefully avoiding any mention of what had happened. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Your mother made pot roast last night. Reminded me of when you were little. The Pattersons' dog had puppies. Thought you'd want to know. As if my mother hadn't banished me from their lives. As if I hadn't been declared dead to them. I didn't respond, though each text felt like a tiny hook trying to pull me back. A week later, the tone changed, urgency creeping in like water through cracks in a dam. Emma, there seems to be some problem with the mortgage assistance program. Can you look into it? The bank called. They say there's been some kind of error. This is rather urgent, sweetheart. Please call back. Sweetheart. He hadn't called me that in years. Still no acknowledgement of what happened. Still no apology. I deleted the messages, but they kept coming. By week 5, desperation had fully set in. The texts came hourly now, from both phones, though I suspected Dad was writing them all. Linda's pride would never let her reach out first, not directly. Emma, please respond. This is urgent. The bank says we don't qualify for the program anymore. They're talking about foreclosure. We could lose everything. Your mother is having chest pains from the stress. Then came Linda's first direct message, a week later. Fix this immediately. 2 words. No apology, no please, no acknowledgement of the horrible things she'd said. Just a command, as if I were still the child who jumped when she snapped her fingers, who cried in her room after being told she was a disappointment, who spent years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I almost laughed at the audacity. Almost. The next message was longer. Your father says you've stopped the payments. This is unacceptable. Whatever tantrum you're having, get over it and fix this situation now. Tantrum. She thought this was a tantrum. 5 years of sacrifice, of going without, of watching my own dreams crumble while building theirs, and she called it a tantrum. Dr. Martinez helped me draft a response I never sent. I am no longer financially responsible for your household. Please do not contact me unless you're ready to discuss what happened with honesty and accountability. But I didn't send it. Silence, I was learning, was sometimes the loudest response. The doorbell rang on a Thursday evening 6 weeks after the dinner. Through the peephole, I saw Robert standing in the hallway of my apartment building, looking older than I remembered, smaller somehow. He was wearing his good coat, the one he only wore to church and funerals, and holding his hat in his hands like a supplicant. I debated not answering, but something in his posture, defeated, exhausted, truly broken, made me open the door. Hi, Dad. Emma. His voice cracked on my name. Can I come in? Please? I stepped aside wordlessly. He sat on my couch, the same one he'd helped me move in 4 years ago when I'd gotten the promotion. Back when I'd just gotten promoted, when I thought success would finally make Linda proud, when I believed that if I just achieved enough, earned enough, sacrificed enough, I could purchase their love. How naive I'd been. He looked around my apartment, really seeing it for the first time. The sparse furniture, the bare walls, the absence of any luxury despite my supposed fancy city lifestyle. You don't live like someone with money, he observed quietly. That's because I don't have money, Dad. It all went to you. His face crumpled like wet paper. The house. We're going to lose the house. I know. You were paying it. All this time you were paying it. $3,000 a month. For 5 years, I confirmed. Since you lost your job. $36,000 a year. $180,000 total. The number hung in the air between us like a physical thing. He started crying then, really crying, not the silent tears I'd seen at his brother's funeral, but body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep and long buried. I'm sorry. Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have stood up to her. I should have defended you. All these years, every cruel word, every comparison, every time she tore you down, I said nothing. I let it happen. I'm a coward. And I failed you as a father. Dad, I can't go back to how things were. I can't keep bleeding myself dry while Mom tells me I'm not enough. I can't do it anymore. I know, but please, just help us figure something out. We'll sell the house, downsize. I'll get a job, any job. I'll work at McDonald's if I have to. Just, please, don't abandon us completely. I looked at this man who had stood silent while my mother tore me apart week after week, year after year. The man who had perfected the art of disappearing into himself whenever conflict arose. But I also saw the father who taught me to ride a bike in the parking lot behind the grocery store, who secretly bought me books Linda thought were too advanced, who hugged me when I graduated college even as Linda complained about my degree choice not being practical enough. He was weak, yes, but he wasn't cruel. That had to count for something. 3 conditions, I said, my voice firm. First, Mom apologizes. A real apology, not one of her, I'm sorry you feel that way, non-apologies. She acknowledges what she said, what she's done, and she apologizes sincerely. Second, you both acknowledge what I've done for you, publicly, to the family. No more pretending, no more lies about bank programs. Third, we establish boundaries. I'm not your bank. I'm not your emotional punching bag. I'm your daughter, and you'll treat me with respect or not at all. He nodded eagerly, desperately. Yes, anything. Whatever you need. I'm serious, Dad. 1 violation and I'm done. Forever. No second chances, no guilt trips, no flying monkeys sent to change my mind. Done. I understand. I'll talk to her. I'll make her understand. She has to want to understand. You can't make her do anything. That's part of the problem. Neither of you take responsibility for your choices. He left with promises to try, and I spent the rest of the night wondering if I'd just opened a door I should have kept locked. It took another 4 weeks before Linda agreed to meet. 4 weeks of Dad calling, texting, showing up at my office once. Security turned him away per my instructions, begging and pleading. Linda had apparently spent the first 2 weeks insisting I would come to my senses, the 3rd week raging about my ingratitude, and only in the 4th week, when the foreclosure notices became impossible to ignore, did she finally crack. We met in their living room, the one I'd been paying for, on a gray Sunday afternoon. The house felt different, heavier somehow, like it knew its time was running out. Linda sat in her usual chair, her face a mask of controlled fury. Robert sat between us, literally and figuratively. The silence stretched like taffy, sticky and uncomfortable. Finally she spoke. I overreacted. I waited. Dr. Martinez had taught me about the power of silence, how it created space for truth to emerge. I was wrong. To say those things. To throw you out. Still, I waited. This was her pattern, minimal admission of fault, just enough to get what she wanted. Linda's jaw clenched. I'm sorry. The words seemed to physically pain her, each syllable dragged out like a confession under torture. I was jealous. You have everything I never did, education, career, independence. I was stuck here, in this house, in this life, watching you become everything I wanted to be, and I took it out on you. I made you feel small because I felt small. I'm sorry. It was more than I'd expected, but I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone and showed them my bank statements. 5 years of transfers, highlighted in yellow. $180,000, I said. That's what I've paid. While you criticized my job, my clothes, my life choices, I was hemorrhaging money to keep you in this house. While you told your friends I was selfish for not visiting more often, I was working weekends to make enough to cover your mortgage and my rent. While you called me a disappointment, I was saving you from homelessness." Linda's face went white. Robert looked like he might be sick. "I didn't know," Linda whispered. "I didn't know it was that much." "You didn't want to know. You wanted to believe in the fairy tale of the bank program because facing reality would mean admitting you couldn't afford your lifestyle. It would mean admitting you needed help. It would mean admitting your disappointment of a daughter, was the one keeping you afloat." "What do you want from us?" Linda asked, and for the first time in my life, she sounded fragile. "I'm done paying," I said firmly. "But I'll help you figure out a plan. You need to sell this house. It's too big, too expensive, and it's full of equity. Find something you can actually afford on Dad's Social Security and whatever part-time work he can get. Mom, you need to consider working too. You're only 62. You could work another few years." "But this is our home," Linda protested weakly. "We raised you here. All our memories." "No," I interrupted. "This was the house I paid for while being told I was never good enough. Your home will be wherever you can afford to live. And memories don't pay mortgages." Robert, for the first time in my memory, stood firm. "She's right, Linda. We're selling. Emma's given us more than we deserved, and we're not losing our daughter over a house." Linda looked at him like he'd grown a second head. In 35 years of marriage, I'd never heard him contradict her so directly. The process wasn't easy. Linda fought every step, clinging to pride and the image she wanted to project to her friends and neighbors. She worried about what people would think, what they'd say. But Robert, transformed by desperation and shame into someone with a backbone, held firm. "We're selling," he repeated whenever she protested. "Emma's right. We can't afford this, and I won't lose my daughter to protect your pride." They found a small condo 20 minutes away. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a tiny yard. It was nice, manageable, and most importantly, within their means. The mortgage payment would be less than half what they'd been paying. I helped with the logistics, but not the finances. I found them a real estate agent, reviewed contracts, explained terms, but I didn't contribute a penny. The day they moved, Linda pulled me aside. We stood in the empty living room where she'd banished me months earlier, sunlight streaming through windows I'd helped pay for. "I know I haven't been easy," she said, the understatement of the century. "But I do love you. I just never knew how to show it properly. My mother was the same way, you know. Critical, harsh. I swore I'd be different, but I became her anyway. Maybe worse. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't even close to enough. But it was a start, a crack in the armor she'd worn for so long." "I need you to understand something, Mom," I said. "I'm not coming back to the same relationship. Things have to be different. I need to be able to visit without being attacked. I need to be able to exist without constant criticism. Can you do that?" She nodded slowly. "I can try. I will try." Marcus flew in to help with the move, taking time off from his job in Seattle. Watching him interact with our parents, I realized how much healthier his boundaries were. He helped, but from a distance. He engaged, but with limits. He'd figured out years ago what had taken me decades to learn. "I can't believe they're actually doing this," he said, watching Dad organize boxes with newfound determination, actually taking charge of something for once. "People can change," I replied, though I wasn't entirely convinced yet. "Maybe," he said. "But you changed first. You stood up for yourself. You stopped enabling them. That's what made the difference. They had to face consequences for once." 6 months later, the rhythm had settled into something manageable. I visited once a month, always with an exit strategy, my own car, plans afterward, a built-in excuse to leave if things went south. Linda still made the occasional sharp comment, but Robert would immediately call her out. "Linda, boundaries," he'd say, and miraculously, she'd stop. It was like watching someone learn a new language, slow and halting but progressing. My own life had expanded in ways I hadn't expected. Without the constant financial drain, I'd been able to save money for the first time in years. Without the weekly emotional battery, I had energy for relationships. I'd started dating James, a fellow consultant who made me laugh and never once criticized my choices or compared me to anyone else. Jessica and I took a vacation to Costa Rica, something I'd never have afforded before. I bought furniture that wasn't from thrift stores, ate at restaurants without checking my bank balance first, and even started therapy for issues beyond my family. "You seem lighter," Dr. Martinez observed during what would be one of our last regular sessions. "How do you feel about everything that's happened?" "Free," I said without hesitation. Not free from them, but free from the weight of trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. Free from the belief that I had to buy my place in the family. Free from the lie that sacrifice equals love. The last Sunday dinner I attended before writing this was almost normal. Linda had made pot roast, my childhood favorite, without being asked. Robert talked enthusiastically about his part-time job at Home Depot, something he'd resisted at first, but now genuinely enjoyed. "I actually like it," he said with surprise. "Talking to people about their projects, helping them figure things out. And the employee discount is fantastic." "Your father's become quite the handyman expert," Linda added with something approaching pride. "He fixed the leaky faucet in the condo all by himself. YouTube is amazing." As I drove home that night, I thought about cycles and breaking them. About the difference between helping and enabling. About the price of keeping secrets and the cost of revealing them. My parents' house, their real home now, was smaller than the one I'd saved. But maybe, just maybe, it was built on something more solid than lies and resentment. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. "Thank you for dinner. Drive safe. Love you." 3 words she hadn't said in years. Simple words, but from her, they meant everything. I'd lost the family I thought I needed to save. In its place, I'd gained something smaller but more real. Parents who were learning to stand on their own feet, a brother who supported my boundaries, and most importantly, the knowledge that love shouldn't cost you everything you have to give. The mortgage payments had stopped, but something else had started. A chance at a relationship built on truth, respect, and boundaries. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, still times when Linda's criticism would start to surface, and Robert would have to remind her. There were still family gatherings I skipped, calls I didn't answer, boundaries I had to reinforce. But for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't paying for the privilege of being family. I was just being their daughter, on my own terms, at a price I could afford to pay. Nothing more than what I freely chose to give.